to me. The songs of Mother Goddess and the Father in the tree.
Hello, my lovelies. This is Paisley Wild, and we are off adventuring into the spaces between. We are being broadcast live on Truth Frequency Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live, and also on YouTube. So, hello, YouTube World and TFR World. Hi, Deb. So, it looks like we've got Jan for Peace and Matthias. I don't know if I'm going to say that right. Just we'll call you Matthias. Hi, Matthias. And then in YouTube World, I see Jessica and Dawn, Cameron, and Deb. Hi, Deb. And Monster. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining me here tonight. No matter how you are listening to, make sure you stop in and say hello with a quick wave shout out. If you're in YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button, and especially if you like the show. And you'll be notified every time we are live, or I am live, I guess. If you've got the little button, little bell thing highlighted. I'm drinking water tonight, but you can't tell sometimes. Also, if you want to support the show, the website is www.thespacesbetween.live, and I promise there will be more content in there soon. And then last night I was on a local show, Witches and Wine with Lola Starr, and I will have a link for that particular show on my website as well. It was a good time. We had wine and we talked about witchy stuff. And it was really good. It was really, really, really good. And yes, after the adventures of yesterday, I do believe most of the cider insanity is cleaned up. There may be a little bit left on the windows. I'll have to double check, but curtains will be going back up tomorrow, and the ceiling is spotless. So yeah, it was just crazy. For those that may not have heard last night, is I broke my favorite Pyrex cup, which has a kitchen witch. That's a big deal and quite sad. So my early Yule list, Christmas list, is requesting another 4-cup size Pyrex measuring cup. They're not that big a deal. I mean, they're everywhere. It shouldn't be that hard to find a good one, right? I mean, it's Pyrex. And then exploded a bottle of homebrewed apple cider all over the ceiling. So yeah, it was quite the adventure. YouTube, if it doesn't have video of the mess, it shall by the end of the weekend. So yeah, good times. Last night, I was talking about kind of unintended consequences. You know, as we plan things or try to do things, no matter what it is in the world, it doesn't matter what your path is, your faith, or any of that. It really, really, really doesn't matter, because there's always some unforeseen consequences, some things that just don't pop up on your radar when you're planning or scheduling or anything like that. And it kind of came from, the unplanned mopping of my ceiling. And one of the questions that was posed in chat last night was something that I felt maybe I should address a little bit more, especially since it is the season as kind of Samhain, and why is the veil thinning? And it's something that we don't really go into very much or very often, or I haven't really yet. So I felt that maybe we should discuss that just a bit. So, by the way, call lines are open. So if you want to call in, it's 213-233-3998, or if you're in the UK, it's 44203-393-2871. If you wanted to email me, it is wildpaisley@gmail.com, and that's WILDEPAISLEY. So yes, that is all of those things. And so yeah, what is it with the thinning of the veil, and why is it thin, and kind of what's going on there? So did a little bit of research, just kind of off the cuff, because I was out of the house most of the day, visiting a friend of mine who is more of a druidic tradition, and got to see his sacred spaces and his where they have their maypole, and just they are fortunate enough that they have a space set aside just for the maypole, and then they have another spot, so they have the they're like their Burning Man when they do that kind of a ritual, and then they also have just this giant canopy over a triquetra, and with plinths for the different goddesses and the points and everything, and it's just really super cool. It was fun, and I really enjoyed seeing that space. So thank you for inviting me, and so yeah, it was good. So, anyways, moving on because I got home late and then had to feed Minnie Paisley and all that. Yep, good times. So, what is Sow-Ween? Okay, so first off, Sow-Ween is spelled Samhain. And for those of you who have read anything or talked to anybody from Ireland that may speak like Gaelic, for instance, the letters don't always match up with the sounds that we're familiar with here in the U.S. And it is kind of a very foreign language to look at. And so Sow-Ween or Sow-Ween is Samhain. So, and yeah, it's an interesting thing. Hold on, let me close out some stuff here because I got too much going on, which is kind of the way it works. So the veil, just for those who might want to understand that a little bit more, Nase, you are more than welcome to call in, even if it is only an hour. YouTube, we might go a little bit more. We'll see. So the veil is the ethereal curtain that separates the physical world that we live in from what those might call the afterlife, or the realm beyond, where if you pass into the next life, you're over there. Now, some may feel that the veil is between our current realm and the realm of magic. So it really depends upon your interpretation and your path. And in some places or some traditions, it's just basically kind of like a curtain that separates our mortal realm, where we live, from the wonder of the eternal divine, and that connects all things. So it's just the dividing point that is between the seen and the unseen, the known and unknown. It is the space between, which is kind of funny. So if you do spirit walks or astral walks, or in the dream world, or if you do divinations or anything like that, you're often connecting to the spirit realm or the realm beyond the veil to get some of that information. And why does it thin, especially during Sow-Ween and Beltane even, is because as the wheel of the year turns, the veil naturally thins between this world and the next, when the days are getting shorter, and we are preparing to withdraw from the summer season and begin the winter season. And often, so here in the northern hemisphere, that happens in October. And so why is it important? Well, if you're naturally in tune with the supernatural, then you're going to see and notice and feel things more during this month. May be easier for you to connect and speak with and communicate with those beyond the grave. You may experience significant increases in spiritual visitors or energies. And often it's a very magical feeling, but there are some precautions to take. Of course, some protections you should take if you're trying to get in touch with the spirit realm. And I have to tell you, October is not the time of the year to experiment with the Ouija board here in the U.S. Actually, personally, I don't think you should experiment with the Ouija board, period. But that is a me thing. Yeah, no. If you don't know what's going on, then don't. If you don't know how to close out a session properly, do not open it by using a Ouija board. It is not a harmless toy made by Parker Brothers. I'm not sure who managed to get that marketed like it was a good idea, but man, they're working for someone. So Sow-Ween actually started or has origins with the ancient Celts, and they marked it as one of the most significant of the 4 quarterly festivals that takes place uh, during the year, and especially during the midpoint between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. And during this time of year, hearth fires in the family homes were left to burn out while the harvest was being gathered. And then after the harvest was completed, the celebrants would then join with the priests and priestesses to light community fires using a wheel that would cause friction and spark flames. And the wheel was considered a representation of the sun and was used along with prayers and chants and just rituals in general. And there was often sacrificial animals and other participants who took flame from the communal bonfire then to back to their home to relight the hearth fires. And so there's some texts that do say that Samhain was a mandatory celebration that lasted 3 days and 3 nights. And as a community, you were required to participate. And for those that did not participate and show themselves or present themselves to the local king or chieftain, there was a potential punishment. Often, illness or death was expected from the gods and the goddesses. And now in Ireland itself, there was a military aspect to Samhain, with holiday thrones prepared for commanders of soldiers. So if you committed a crime or used your weapon during the celebration, you actually faced a death sentence. So they took Samhain very, very, very literally. There's often fires on area hilltops or sacred hilltops that were lit also from this communal fire to kind of spread throughout the countryside to protect the land or the realm where they lived. And Christians saw this, ooh, hey, let's burn the witches. No, that's not really what was going on. It was more a celebratory thing and a re-energizing or re-blessing of the land. Now, there are some monsters, of course, that are associated with Samhain, because as the barrier thinned, or the veil thinned, there's offerings that were left outside the villages for the fairies, the fae, the sea, that kind of thing. And there's also some expectation or anticipation that in the Celtic tradition that the fairies or the fae would attempt to kidnap the people, so they would dress as animals and monsters, like in costume, and so they would not be kidnapped then by the fae. Now, some specific monsters were associated with this particular time frame, including the puka, which receives the harvest offerings from the field and was a shape shifter. And then Lady Gwyn was a headless woman dressed in white who chased night wanderers and accompanied by a black pig. And the Dullahan, which sometimes appeared as impish creatures, sometimes headless men on horses who carried their heads, riding flame-eyed horses. And their appearance was actually a death omen to anyone who encountered them. You may be familiar with the Headless Horseman myth and Ichabod Crane. Was it Ichabod? Yeah. Kind of originated here. And then also the Great Hunt is often associated with Samhain, and it's the Fae host may go through and they're doing a great hunt. They're providing justice to those who have created or done certain crimes throughout the year. And then similar like the Usla, who would come from the west to enter the houses and steal souls then. So that's the basics. Yeah, Sleepy Hollow. Now, Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So there's also some various myths, like the Tuatha De Danann, which I can't pronounce now suddenly, and other evil oppressors like the Fomor, and myths around that state that a battle unfolded or happened over Samhain. And there's just a lot of Celtic mythology there. So, dressing up like monsters. That's why we dress up in costumes, that kind of thing. So, as the Middle Age progressed, of course, so did the fire festivals and such. And Like I mentioned already, that those fires that they were lit were often considered to protect families from fairies and witches, bad witches. They carved turnips, and they called them jack-o'-lanterns rather than pumpkins, and they attached them to strings and sticks and then embedded with coal. And then they switched to pumpkins because they're easier to carve than a turnip. I don't know if anybody has ever tried to cook a turnip. Yeah, carving them is not easy. And there's all sorts of games that were played. Now, in to revere or to honor those that had passed beyond the veil, often there was a tradition called a dumb supper. Yes, dumb like stupid, but dumb supper. And often the food during the dumb supper was consumed by celebrants, but only after inviting their ancestors to join in, which would give the family a chance to interact with the spirits until they left following dinner. And so when you do a dumb supper, often you will set a space at the table, just like you would for a guest, but there's no one sitting there. If you feel, throughout the day or year or anytime you feel a need to connect with your ancestors, you can have a dumb tea, kind of a similar situation where you set a place for your ancestor. Excuse me. And then you do whatever it is you're going to do, have a conversation, that kind of thing. And then with the empty space, while you're talking to your ancestors. So it's just another way to communicate and to connect. And children would often play games to entertain the dead, while adults would update the dead on the past year's news. So kind of a conversation. And then that night, doors and windows might be left open for the dead to come in and eat the cakes that were left for them. So kind of like a creepy Santa Claus. So I'm not sure. Now, when Christianity started to gain popularity, church leaders really tried to turn Samhain into a Christian celebration, because they were trying to purge or expunge anything that was not Christian. And like in the 5th century, one of the popes tried to move the celebration to May 13th and celebrated it as All Saints' Day. And then there's still the fire festivals in October, November, and it just really, the people are like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. And then in the 9th century, a different pope moved the celebration back to, at the time of the fire festivals. And again, they redeclared it All Saints' Day on November 1st, or All Souls' Day then would be on November 2nd. So All Hallows' Eve, or Halloween, then became the more pagan aspect of the celebration, the 3-day celebration. Excuse me. So, and in Halloween itself, people would, often dress up in costume and then go door to door knocking and singing and singing songs to the dead, that kind of thing. And then cakes were given as payments. So think of Christmas caroling, but instead of Christmas caroling, they were singing songs to the dead, so Halloween caroling. And they'd be dressed in costume and stuff. And there's also a lot of pranks that were and practical jokes that were created during or for Samhain, which is why people say trick or treat. Treat would be the candy, trick would be, the prank. So and then those pranks were often blamed on the fairies or the fae. And then in the 80s, there was a really big revival of the celebration of Samhain by the Wicca tradition. And now the Wiccan celebration generally takes on several different forms, including the fire ceremony, and Halloween itself, and other activities to honor their ancestors. But generally, it's just a celebration. In Druid traditions, Samhain is often a celebration of the dead, with a festival on October 31st with a bonfire and just you're communing with the dead and discussing things. And then American pagans often have music and dance celebrations called witches' balls in proximity to Samhain. So, yes, just real quick. Yes, they say October is the 8th month of the year. it's complicated because Julius Caesar, I think it was the Julian calendar, is the one where the Romans decided there needed to be more months to honor other people, and they put that at the beginning of the year, which pushed October from the 8th month to the 11th month. So I guess politics put Samhain on 13, or the 11th month, 13 numbers a month here. I'm not certain on that one, and I'll have to come back to it. So pagans who are considered the Reconstructionists or Celtic Reconstructionists tend to not gonna know how to pronounce that correct. So in this particular tradition, Samhain is called Oiche Shamna, and it celebrates the mating between the Tuatha De Danann gods Dagda and the river Eunice. So in Celtic Reconstructionists celebrate by placing juniper decorations around their homes and creating an altar for the dead, where a feast is held in honor of the deceased loved ones. So that's just in the Celtic tradition. And then the Day of the Dead, which is generally it's another kind of a multi-day party that's in Mexico, and it's also a celebration of the dead, or a time when the veil is thin, so you can really communicate and honor your ancestors. So and that's an entirely different culture in two really big different parts of the world with very, very similar traditions. So it kind of goes back to, remember when we were talking about ley lines several months ago, and how potentially information traveled via the ley lines to impact the different cultures around the world as we kind of spread and grew and developed. So real quick, speaking of witches' balls, of course I stopped and I didn't have this pulled up. So if you're local to the Spokane area, Stan can't spell Spokane. There is a witches' ball coming up here in October, and if you wanted to come, that would be super great. I am trying to attend because, by golly, I think it'll be fun. So that'll be October 26th as the annual witches' ball. And it's for Spokane Pagans and Witches, kind of a local or regional group. And any funds generated are raised and used for the pagan community. Tickets are $25 per person, or if you order online, it's $20 a piece. And I will have a link in the show notes, so if you guys want to know more about that. It is an adults-only event. It does have a theme. It is Dia de los Muertos, so Day of the Dead. So I expect to see some sugar skulls and just celebration of the dead. I think that will be just a grand time, and it's put on by Squirrely Productions. It's kind of a local group that does pagan meetups and such. So in the YouTube land, there is a link, and I'll put it in the show notes for TFR so you guys can see it there. So, but yeah, that's the annual Witches' Ball. It's on October 26th at 6 p.m. And I think it'll be fun times. So it'll be at the Corbin Senior Center in Spokane. So if you want more information, check out my Facebook page or the website, thespacesbetween.live, and I'll have links in there for so you can see it and kind of experience, look to see what's going on. They'll be good times. But costumes are highly recommended, and I'm gonna go. I think it'll be fun. It'll be a good time. So let me check real quick. Look at my clock, because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So yes, if you want to email me show ideas, that is wildpaisley@gmail.com, WILDEPAISLEY @gmail.com. and my website, yeah, the spaces between .live, and the call line is open. That number is 213-233-3998, and we are here at the bottom of the hour already. Can you believe that? It's been half an hour. Another big news. This is my 40th episode, 40th show on YouTube, I believe. But I think it's like 42nd shows overall. So yeah, something like that. So yeah, it's been fun. So woody woot, and so just like that, we are at the bottom of the hour. So I'm going to transition over. You're going to listen to some horrible music because I need to redo it, and I will be right back. So thank you.
I call upon you in this hour, bring magic unto me. Brothers, oh, the cauldron cries, it singeth unto me the songs of Mother Goddess and of Father in the tree.
Hello, my lovelies. This is Paisley Wild, and we are adventuring out into the spaces between. We are live on TFR and YouTube, so hello, my lovelies. And Naysay, I did answer in chat, but just so you know, Ember days or Ember months are generally associated with early Christian churches, and it was a way to mark the first Sunday of the month. So yes, there was originally considered 13 months or 13 Ember days in the calendar. So I hope that answers your question. It's more of a Christian thing than a pagan thing. Although I've noticed there's a fair number of pagan-esque stuff that's really assumed to be more Christian. So that as I have explored my path and learned some things, that's very, very interesting. So yeah, talking about Sow-Ween, and so as I was saying at the top of the hour, or when we first started, Sow-Ween is when we talk about the thinning of the veil, and it's just kind of where everyday world brushes it up against the that illusionary barrier or curtain between our realm, or where we are, our world, and the universal connection, or beyond. It could be called the Summerlands. It could be called Hell, Hel. It could be Purgatory, depending on what your path is, or Valhalla, possibly. I don't know. So the afterlife varies with which tradition and which path that you follow. So whatever comes after you cross the veil will vary with your path and the way you believe. And often, if we're having a meditation or a mystical experience of some sort, you are crossing that curtain slightly, and you're able to gaze into the place between worlds. And so the veil thins. Because the days are getting shorter and the natural world is preparing to withdraw from the realm of life and growth, and that harvest cycle is beginning to wane also, but it's not quite gone, so we're still trying to get the last of everything in, and but it's just kind of a realm of change, and a sense of stillness, the calm before the storm, if you will, of winter. And there's a serenity, I guess, if you will, to this openness that we know that as the cycle of the year turns, that we are back to this resting period before the new growth of spring. And that's part of the reason why so many of us love a fall. Fall is probably my favorite time of the year. I love October, not just because it's my birthday this month, but it is. But also, I feel very, very drawn to this part of the year. This time of the color, the changes, the mosquitoes have all died off, hopefully. At least where I am. If you're over on the East Coast, where it's still triple digits this week, I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry. I will send you some snow, maybe. But, this time of the year, even if you're not pagan or magically inclined, death is kind of a big symbol for the U.S. this time of year. There's scary movies, there's ghosts, graveyards, zombies, that kind of thing. And our finite nature is starting to meet the infinite nature. So the living and the dead, naturally, intersect. Now, black cats are often popularized this time of year. Well, it's mostly, cats have always been kind of guardians of the dead anyways, and it doesn't matter if they're a black cat or an orange cat, they're still kind of guardians there. So, um, I don't know why black cats are so demonized. I think they're awesome, except for when it's dark out and I'm trying to walk down the hallway and I trip over one. So yeah, it's just that may be something to look into. I don't know. I love cats. But anyways, the space between worlds is just also a place of power, also. And it's our birthright once we connect with it and are open to it. And often we get in our own way during the rest of the year because we're busy doing this, going here. Got to get the planting in for green or spring. Your gardens. You got kids stuff going on all summer, and just it's just kind of a busy. But when it comes to fall, it's time for that to kind of calm down. We're approaching the winter stillness, and so for me, I've always felt a sense of relief as we hit fall because I feel like my world is slowing down and I'm able to get more stuff done. Hopefully, not always, but I try to. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a time for me of peace before the insanity of the holiday season, I guess, when family and expectations change. And it's just craziness. So yeah, my favorite time of the year. Now, just doing a quick search here. I had some more information on the veil itself. Not really applicable, I guess. It's more.
So hey, Paisley.
Hi.
Hey, so you're talking about the thinning of the veil. So, and everybody, hi, it's Don. But when you talk about thinning of the veil, when you're talking about October, and on the portal we always talk about how the thinning of the veil, more ghosties and goblins come through. And I know I think you mentioned the Duende, and you mentioned Fae, but what about spirits themselves? What about the spirits you talked about the Spanish tradition of De la de Muerte, and how, they sing to their ancestors and things like this. Does that bring them through? Clarification, please.
I don't know that it necessarily brings them through. It's just
Is it like a phone call?
yeah, kind of like a phone call. But the door is cracked. So think of it as a door. Most of the time during the year, the door is shut. The way is shut. The way is closed. But leading up to Sow-Ween and Beltane both, that way the door becomes unlocked and the door is then cracked slightly, and it allows those that want to come through the doorway to come through. But as we pass Beltane and Sow-Ween both, the veil begins to firm up and that doorway it closes, and you're drawn back, or the spirits are drawn back to the other side.
And you said that's because of the shortening of the days, because going into, obviously, from fall. What is it, an equinox or a solstice? I keep forgetting.
Equinox.
So from September 22nd on, we start losing basically 3 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
3 minutes of sunlight a day. So you're saying it's because the nights are getting longer, that at some point in October, or beginning of November, that is the thinnest, and then it starts thickening back up, like because we start gaining, when winter comes around, December 22nd, we start gaining those 3 minutes back.
Mm-hmm.
So does that also allow gods to step through?
That's more complicated, I think. Probably they.
Do you think that it prevents the gods from stepping through? Do you think that has anything to do with it? Because we talk about all the time. We talk about people talking to God, people in the Christian sense, people talking to God and God replying to them. So that happens, and then I had my dream about Odin, and then we've had lots of people have dreams about gods and prophecies and things like this. does the veil stop them, if at all?
No, I don't think so. The call-in number, I got a question on that. It is 213-233-3998.
They say it's the same one for all of TFR except for Brent.
So,
Oh,
even
timer's gone.
even pagans have to do laundry. I don't have a house elf. I want one.
I don't know what you said, but anyhow.
Pagans have to do laundry. I want a house elf. That's what I want for Christmas.
House elf, like
House
Adobe,
elf,
yeah. Creature.
Creature? Poor creature. I liked creature.
So,
I think the gods can cross at any point. It's probably easier when the veil is thinner. Less energy is required of them. Because I'm sure there's an energy expenditure when you cross the veil at any point. I mean, that's part of the reason why it's hard for us to just do it in the waking world without some sort of premeditation to it.
Right.
Literally, you meditate on it. You do your offering. That kind of you have set your intent
right.
Prior to calling. And then I'm sure that there are times when it is harder for the gods to cross. Like from my understanding, there are some gods that are stronger during the summer months than they are during the winter months. So if I were to follow that thought process, it'd be harder for the summer gods to cross in the winter months and vice versa.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought of that.
Because they're the ebb and flow of their own powers with the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think would impact their ability to cross over and communicate with us directly or more directly. If that makes sense.
Right. I was going to make a skyclad comment, but I'm going to let that go. Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting.
All right. So I have a caller. Oh, gosh. I haven't done this in a while.
That's Naysay.
Hello, Naysay. I want to make sure I'm doing this right. So, caller, you are live. Hello? Kevin in Minnesota? Naysay?
Hi, Paisley and Don.
Hi.
I have to say I've been enjoying when I am up this late with your show, and congratulations on it. One of the reasons why I was calling is Don may know that I'm a little obsessive when it comes to the cycles of the moon and the sun and everything. And for some clarification, the moon and the earth and the sun do not get in position because man's calendar says it's September 21st.
Mm-hmm.
The definition of the equinox is equal day and equal night.
Right.
And ironically, this year, it was Wednesday the 26th was the equal day and equal night. And another thing that's really strange is we get conditioned is that when we talk about midnight, wasn't actually 12 noon or midday or noon, wasn't 12 noon or 12 at night. It was the middle of the night. So when we go into this time frame of longer nights, depending on when the sun set and the sun would rise, would depend on the, for lack of a better term, witching hour.
Yes.
Because it was in the absolute middle of the darkness of that night.
Yes.
And if I may also add, one thing that we really don't catch anymore is that the heavenly sun is a huge electromagnetic mass that sends out fields, or we could call it radiation. And as the sun goes through its cycle in accordance with the earth, as the earth rotates, all of that electromagnetic waves or fields are not bombarding us. And so when we are in a time of day or in a time of night, we are not getting those electromagnetic fields. Thus, our own electromagnetic field is being manipulated. And so as we go through that long period of darkness, allegedly the pineal gland, which is an eyeball that utilizes light and day in its optimal functioning, that darkness will add more dopamine or add even more of a stimulation of the pineal gland. So you add that darkness into the long darkness of the evening, and you literally have an electromagnetic occurrence that is happening within your essence or your body. And then on top of that, look at what happens when you get the reflection of that electromagnetic wave off of the moon, and then we get that rebounded or reflected light also in the mix of it. And this is why my ancestors would pay close attention to sunrise and sunset and moonrise and moonset, because they're totally different graphs if you were to graph the two of them.
Yes.
And that's one thing.
different.
I have a question for Paisley.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said yes. The energy is very different during those time frames: moonrise, moonset, sunrise, sunset, midday, midnight. Yes. So it's your question.
And my question I have for you, and Don has heard this before, and I've shared it with Brent many times. In 2018, our moon lunar month has changed from 28 days to now 30 days. And I was wondering if you have noticed that, Paisley, because I cannot find anybody discussing this.
I have noticed that it has lengthened a little bit, and my personal interpretation is that our wheel of time, or the wheel of this age, is spinning in such a way that this age is coming to a close. And that doesn't mean it's the end of the world or anything like that. It's the end of this particular age, and as the wheel spins, we're going to be encountering or opening up the next one. And it's so we're bringing back some of the energies that were once upon a time, the age of the heroes, if you will, or when a lot of the miracles happened, or the magic was stronger. Maybe it was when the pyramids were built, when that energy was different. And so I think it's just part of that transitory period, or that the way it's beginning to impact our world. The esoteric is impacting the physical, if you will. And
well, I would absolutely agree with that too.
I do think it may be also just a little bit of the Mandela effect, perhaps. If any of you have listened to the Paranormal Portal, the Mandela effect is something that's discussed periodically, and normally it's a big deal, but this one may be a little bit more subtle or less subtle, depending on how you want to look at it. That change is beginning to happen, and it's a bigger one, so maybe we're starting to brush up against a different dimension more, or transitioning into a different dimension, or combining different dimensions.
Yeah, you're talking about thinning of the veil again.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I think the veil itself, the structure of it's changing. So I think there's been, anybody who has been paying attention, paganism and polytheism is right now kind of on a rise. It's becoming more noticeable. People are connecting more with their esoteric energies and abilities. There's those who have a psychic gift are feeling it more strongly. I myself can feel the energy of the earth in our area has changed. Just where the house is and everything. We're not on a ley line, but there are times I would almost swear that we are. So it's the energy is increasing, it's changing, and I think the veil itself is changing as we move through this cycle and transition into the next. So,
Have you done any research with ley lines and how some of the indigenous people, and forgive me if I'm sharing this without asking some elders, but as an Anishinaabe, the French called us Ojibwe, the English called us Chippewa, we discussed about using the ley lines for teleportation.
so I discussed ley lines a while back, and I don't know that about teleportation, but definitely telecommunication. I think that the ley lines were definitely used as a way to transmit ideas, around the world. Whether it's a thought energy or just energy in general, but is a way to communicate. I don't know about teleportation, but I know that a lot of the tribal elders and storytellers, I feel they have a lot more information than they share with the rest of the world. Partly, I've lived and worked with the Ojibwe, and then the Chippewa and the Coeur d'Alenes, and there's just some information they don't share with people not of their specific culture.
Yeah.
Is their secrets.
Well, that is somewhat of a challenge that I have with some of the elders, because I think we're at a pivotal point where some knowledge or wisdom should be shared more openly in order to help the transition from the one phase to the next phase be a little bit smoother.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, smoother would be good, but I think some of it's a learning process. And for those who are not awakened or part of, or don't have that esoteric awareness, may need that proverbial smack in the face or the blunt object, hammer, whatever you want to call it, to wake them up. And then there's still going to be some that no matter how many times you show them that the sky is blue, they're still going to insist that it's purple. So there's, even though you're showing someone, or explaining to someone how, life really is, until they've experienced it 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt, they're gonna not necessarily believe it.
You can't shake people's paradigms like that, and that's the dangerous part of it, is endangering their view of the world, their paradigm. If you endanger that, then people just give up or they fight back. And there are people who aren't going to wake up. There just aren't. They're not ever going to wake up. There's nothing you can do for it, and that's the unfortunate thing. But I think you're right in a lot of that, and a lot of the ideas that you've just discussed.
Thank you. So yeah.
Right, and as a Minnesota boy, I'm always stuck that the sky is purple. Shout out to Brent.
Shout out to Brent. Yep.
So,
Oof,
but
I
I'll
don't
let
know.
you go. I'll let you go, Pace. We really
right, thanks,
enjoyed the
Nathan.
show. Thank you. And
Thank you for
good to
calling
hear
in.
your voice, Don.
Thank you, sir. It's always nice to speak with you.
Thank you.
All right. Now I got a reason to stay up late on the weekends. Toodles.
All right. Well, have a good night, my dear. So thank you, Nasa. So yeah, I think I really do. I feel like this age is transitioning to the next one.
Well, and you were just talking about it earlier too, about for lack of a better term, the return of the age of heroes, or the old ways are reemerging, and and that person you were talking to also talked about a 2,000-year cycle, and so as we come up to what has been deemed the time of Common Era,
Mm-hmm.
which used to be called, the Adomine, right? Okay, which is after death, meaning of course Christ. as we're coming up to 2033 years, you know, who knows? I mean, that's the way I figure it because, supposedly, times to century one was, the death of Christ, started at the death of Christ. So if we're coming up on like, if it whether it be 2033 or 2133, that's yet to be seen. But certainly, time is not of essence. It's not really something. I don't think it's something we should pay attention to, except for the workings of our average everyday life, because time is a construct in my view. A lot of the things we're here to do something, but time is not part of it. We're not supposed to be watching our time. We're supposed to be making the most of it.
Oh, and goodness, I'm going to cut you off because...
Talk about time.
Yep, time. We're out of it.
Sorry, I co-opted your show.
Shame on you. So, it is Wild Paisley, WILDEPAISLEY at gmail.com. And it is Merry Meet, Merry Meet again.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
As we will, so mote it be, the spell forever done.